The Future Sport Podcast is brought to you by 3Advance, developers of sports tech apps that are AI-powered and UX-focused. So if you're looking to create some apps for your startup or your sports biz calls for some artificial or business intelligence, you should check out 3Advance. They're incredible. Go to 3advance.com. That's the number 3advance.com.
Empire.
Engagement can mean a lot of different things.
There's an expense associated to, consume live sports, and so they really want to take a holistic approach to it to say, okay, how can we create this one-of-a-kind experience that you can't get in your man cave or in your basement or at home?
That's James Giglio, CEO of MVP Interactive. The in-stadium experience, it's changing. This is the Future Sport Podcast. I'm Bram Weinstein. Once inside, teams and leagues have learned and are learning about what you really want out of game day experiences. But what about just getting in? Brett Goldberg is trying to disrupt the secondary ticket market with his company TickPick. They're trying to win you over by saving you money in those pesky fees. Home or at the game, an eye on fantasy has become commonplace, and Noah Syken from IBM is helping usher in the latest innovations in gaming. But first, the future is now, with something actually happening on a field of play, or in this case, a sheet of ice. The way we watch hockey is about to change, as player tracking should bring a wealth of data options to broadcasters. Fluto Shinzawa from The Athletic joins us now. So what kind of alterations are you expecting us to see?
Well, it's pretty much a blank canvas right now, Bram. It's the data is coming in, and it's going to be up to the league and to the networks, to all the partners involved in the typical NHL broadcast to kind of pick and choose what they want. It could be as simple as how fast a player is skating, how fast a shot is traveling, how many miles a player has skated during a period. It's really going to be up to all the parties involved to see what will make sense to our consumer, because the NHL, like every other league and every other sport, is dealing with the issue of the audience. How do you engage your consumer, especially the younger ones, when you have such options when it comes to entertainment, when it comes to media, when it comes to everything that your phone is giving you? There's a lot that the league has to gain in terms of being as attractive as possible on television. And the way the product has been, it's been pretty static for a long time. I think it's a good time for this data to come through.
It's interesting. They had one of the really famous flops of a technological advance in broadcasting by putting a streak on the puck. And this was a long time ago, but I wonder if they are gun shy about adding elements to broadcast because of the backlash from things that happened in the past.
Yes, I think that's a significant concern, especially just given that hockey, let's face it, compared to the other sports, it's a niche sport compared to the football and basketball, college football, baseball, whatever. So when you have a niche sport like that, you have an entrenched customer base. And let's look at your typical 40 or 50 or 60-year-old hockey consumer, and they see a glowing puck on TV, or they see weird graphics and videos and holograms. That's not what they want. They're pretty much satisfied with the product the way it is. It's your score, it's how much time is left, maybe the name of the player and some statistics. Otherwise, your typical entrenched hockey consumer likes the way the broadcast is. But as we know, that might not be good enough for the 10-year-old right now who might grow up and might like hockey and might grow into a consumer, but has Fortnite and has Minecraft and has basketball and everything on his or her phone that's available. So it's really, how do you strike that balance between trying to keep your current customer base engaged and satisfied while bringing in new customers?
All right, so let's talk about those enhancements. this is a fast-moving sport. It's not like racing. You know where the cars are going. You don't know where the puck is going to go at any moment. So how do they intend to incorporate enhancements and not hurt the watchability of the product?
Yeah, it's a real balance. Maybe it's I've heard some talk about some second screen. Let's keep the primary television screen as Spartan as possible in terms of the score and how much time is left, and then maybe the second screen, your phone, your tablet, your computer, something that's synced to the game is where the data is presented. That's one solution. Maybe during replays, maybe during intermissions, maybe those are the pockets, at least to start, where the league and its network broadcast partners will be looking to incorporate some of this data and some of these graphics and video and whatever, that perhaps that's a safe space, if you will, to not take away from the game. And look at those intermissions, look at the replays. Oh, here's a different angle from where this goal was scored, or if you look back on this goal, this is how fast the puck was traveling, or this is the angle at which the pass arrived that was able to open up the player to take the one-timer. So I think they'll be judicious at first in terms of replays and intermissions and maybe the second screen like we talked about, because if you take a significant step at first, I think a lot of people will be a little bit put off by that.
Yeah, listen, I'm with you on all of the enhancements and the attempt to bridge the gap between the new consumer and the younger audiences and what they expect when they consume content. This also does have a feel of an invitation to gambling. Is that some of this too? Yeah.
Oh well, maybe there's a bridge. I think. Well, let's say your 10-year-old who's not ready to be consuming, and maybe you want to bridge up to that. I think the gambling is absolutely a part of getting to that point. So, I think the league and the teams are hoping the faster the better when it comes to approval, and in whatever form it is, whether it's in person, on your phone, at the rink, whatever it is. Yeah, absolutely. That's a way to keep the live sports consumer engaged, or the audience that is invested in the gambling side. And yes, and maybe there's some data out there that will help the gambler become more focused and more accurate in whatever kinds of bets and investments that they're making.
I'll let you go with this. The eye-catching part of the headline was you described one of the innovations as a comparison to a car crash. So we'll let you go on that. What does that mean?
Well, let's say, okay, we have all the weights of these players already. That's known. So you have a 220-pound player accelerating at whatever speed, and he gets checked by a 230-pound player. That's enough data in terms of mass, acceleration, to come up with something that is equivalent to what kind of data you get in a car crash. And this is repeatedly 82 games a year, and then if you go into the playoffs, that's another 2 months of wear and tear. And I think hockey fans understand that this is a physical, demanding, grueling sport, but then to put it in that kind of perspective, I think would be fascinating just for your typical consumer who is engaged with hockey but doesn't know just how physical it is to say, whoa, this player just came away from a fender bender or something like that. I think would be fascinating and would be just another way to tell the story of how brutal the sport can be.
Fluto Shinzawa from The Athletic. Thank you.
You got it.
Up next, fantasy and reality, both eyeing modernization. This is the Future Sport Podcast. Our guest this week is James Giglio, the CEO and founder of MVP Interactive, a consumer engagement technology brand, and that means a lot. Hey, James, how are you?
I'm doing great. Thanks for having me.
What does MVP Interactive do?
Well, as you mentioned, we create really immersive consumer engagement experiences for our professional sports teams, brands, and augmented reality, gesture-based gameplay, and facial recognition to create that engagement piece.
So this is in stadium, correct?
That's correct. Yeah. So we really have two verticals of our business development or how we deploy. And one being sports properties or entertainment venues. We feel that the concourse is really the artery of the heart of the game day, right? And so we leverage stadiums' philosophies of opening up early and staying open late to create these full day experiences. And so we really leverage our technology to do that on concourse. The second avenue of deployment is really working with large advertising agencies and brands to create fan experiences at tentpole marketing events. This could range anything from the NFL draft to All-Star weekend, things of that nature. Essentially, where there's any gathering of individuals consuming in an event, brands really lean on us to create these really cool, memorable experiences through technology.
All right, so let's go back to the games for a moment, the virtual reality games that you guys are creating. Can you give us some examples of what you're doing?
Sure. Well, for example, with the Washington Redskins, we give fans a unique opportunity to really experience, from a point of view standpoint, what it's like to be a player during game day. So that's coming off the bus, walking into the locker room, suiting up, and then walking out of the tunnel onto the field during game day. So what we do is we've attached, not only did we produce and film all of the 360 content, but we integrated a VR headset into an official Washington Redskins helmet. The fans can strap on the helmet, start the experience, and really be immersed to really have access to a part of the stadium and to a part of something that they couldn't normally do as a fan, and that's really to be a player. So that's one example. Another example is, with the Minnesota Vikings, we were able to pair two technologies together, one being virtual reality, where you're essentially a wide receiver and you get to run a route virtually inside the stadium there and then catch a touchdown pass. And the way that you're able to catch that pass is through gesture. So your body is the remote control, so to speak. So with the 3D camera, we're able to track the user's movements and the accuracy on how they catch or not catch the ball, and you can score a touchdown there. So that's a pretty cool experience that lives in the Viking voyage section of US Bank Stadium.
I can't do the Stephon Diggs one, though, right? That's the one that I can't actually have the Vikings moment.
No. I think that's exclusive to him.
That will be,
yeah. To recreate it, but
That's a tough one to recreate. All right, so tell me about getting fans clearly back to the stadium. All the teams are trying to lure them back in. That the game is not necessarily just enough for all of it. So can you talk about what their goals are when they work with you to try to make the experience enhanced for fans that come to games?
Sure. I think the primary feature is to really what we're starting to see is the trend in the team, the understanding and how challenging it is to, have a family come out. There's an expense associated to, consume live sports. And so they really want to take a holistic approach to it to say, okay, how can we create this one-of-a-kind experience that you can't get in your man cave or in your basement or at home, right? And that's something that a lot of properties are fighting with. And as we know, in December and it's negative degrees outside, it's very challenging to leave the house. And so I think, what are integrating with their brand partnerships or their sponsors to say, hey, how can we leverage these engaging pieces of technology to create one-of-a-kind experiences for the fan. And so, it's not only the tailgating experience, it's brought into the concourse experience as well as, other digital touch points. And so whether that's, Jumbotron activations or engagements that, you can only get attending the stadium, really this exclusive feel, whether that's loyalty programs and, merchandising or even down to the concessions and what that is like to purchase food at a stadium and how, teams can avoid or fans can avoid pain points on waiting in line. And so I think leaning towards the fan and really taking a personalized approach to attend a sports game. And it's not just about selling the ticket and you viewing the game any longer. It's almost creating this full day experience, open early, stay open late, and really justify an ROI on that experience on attending a game.
You had mentioned two stadiums that are really from different eras. FedEx Field in Washington, which will be replaced in the next decade or so, but was built in the early 1990s, and it is a standard concrete slab that you have to enhance. And then you mentioned Minnesota's, which is basically brand new and much more technologically forward. As you look at stadiums that are being built now, are you talking to them about the things they need to have in terms of infrastructure to have the abilities that you're talking about?
I think that's a great point that you had brought up, because, one of our main talking points and what we truly believe in as a company and what properties should be doing is really creating these destination points inside the stadium. So we can leverage technology to do that. And it doesn't really matter about the brick and mortar in what the building was constructed of, right? And that's a perfect example of your reference of FedEx Field versus US Bank, right? And so I think when we speak to teams that are, maybe under construction or planning, it's, how can you really holistically think about creating these destination points, these touch points throughout the stadium, and, making sure that the infrastructure is in place. And so at the end of the day, I mean, these stadiums are really being future-proof built, and whether it's the advent of 5G or some of the IT components in how they're using advanced technologies, that's already being done. So they're taking care of a lot of the hard part, where our value add is being able to sort of really work within any shell, any structure, to integrate some of these experiences, because at the end of the day, they don't have to be massive build-outs. They can be temporary in nature. They can be moved around the facility. But yeah, that's really our main talking point, is to how you can have all different touch points and really factors each of your fans, right? And whether that's a child, whether it's a parent, male, female, so on and so forth, and kind of really leverage technology that speaks to everyone.
Let's talk about 5G for a moment. You mentioned it. It will change what you do. How?
I think the speed of connectivity and the way that we can communicate our engagements to each other. So, for example, we'll say the Staples Center could be running some type of interactive experience that is networked to that same experience that's happening in Madison Square Garden. The idea of having that transcontinental connectivity within nanoseconds is really compelling. I think even on the mobile side, where if we talk about augmented reality experiences where, we don't have to worry about any lag in speed, and where things are immediate, download speed, things of that nature, I think is really promising and really exciting to think about what the future holds.
So let's go back to the idea of the modern stadium. What are the aspects of the modern stadium? Baseball, football, even basketball or hockey for that matter, indoor arenas. What are the aspects of the modern stadium that we're going to see in the next 2, 5, 10 years?
Yeah, I think you're going to see a lot of cashless payments. I think there's going to be more integration into, some of the real loyal fans may not like to hear this, but it's a ticketless system. At the entry points, and so everything is moving digitally in how you engage with the stadium itself. I think there's going to be, leveraging technology and mobile apps to use your phone as the credit card, essentially, right? And so being able to navigate your general consumption standpoint is changing. Ingress, egress, RFID technologies, NFC, mobile apps, things of that nature. And I think then, once you're inside stadium, there's going to be other ways to consume the sport itself, right? And so I think if you think about, these luxury suites, there's going to be levels of AI and AR maybe integrated into some of the viewing glass that, can do real-time statistics on a second display while you're watching the game. I think from a fan experience standpoint, you're already seeing the trends in where 3D mapping, digital projections are creating an altered experience on the ice or on the court, and so you're giving fans in the seats a really immersive experience. I think being able to do live feed virtual reality experiences or 360 video, or maybe cutting to a different element of the game. Maybe it is in the locker room, pre-game, post-game, where you could don a headset and have a live stream access to that, and that carries over to even outside of the stadium, right? I think the NBA is certainly on the forefront of being able to provide 180 streaming services to a headset at your home, and so and I think concessions fall in line to how we are going to be able to kind of seamlessly integrate as an individual, and the point of sale is going to change. Quick shop or quick service checkpoints, things of that nature. Even on the retail side, I think there's going to be an element of woven technology in apparel. It's not only track behaviors internally of the fans, but then also from a statistic standpoint on players and, keeping live stats during the game and having that access and that information at the hands of your fingertips there.
So you talk to the teams, they tell you what they'd like to create, you help them create these experiences. What are the fans saying they want? What's their feedback to you?
That's a great that's a great question. I think by and large, it's not necessarily one technology over the other. I think it's about the ease of use and the cost of participation. Right. Everything that we do, we like to think is pretty cool and fans really like and love. But it's the strategy and how it's deployed. Right. So we can have a VR example for fans, but if the team is charging $25 a person to participate, that's going to cause a little bit of friction, and so that's where properties are leaning on sponsors to help underwrite those programs so fans can have access to all of this stuff, and they want to touch and feel and explore. It's much more like a theme park or an amusement park experience where we haven't heard necessarily we want one technology over the other. I think as a technology company, we are on the forefront of being able to keep pace with all of the emerging technologies. But I think it's really the execution piece on how accessible it is to the fan.
I'll let you go with this because it sounds like you are in a rush to get off of this train. So I'll let you go with this. I would assume that in the end, the team still wants the focus to be what's happening on that field of play, whichever surface it may be. So how do they get that balance with we're giving the fan these experiences that they want to come, stay, it's more than just the game, and yet the focus of it still is what's happening in front of them?
That's right. And I think you nailed it because I think what properties are now understanding is sometimes they really can't have control on the success or failures of the team, right? Things happen and that's the great nature of sports, and it's the best live platform on earth. And so I think when they think about those variables to say, okay, let's create the experience. We're going to give the fans an amazing, memorable experience throughout the whole game time. But during the time that there's butts in seats, so to speak, we're going to make sure that every break time there's integrated with music, maybe projection mapping. Live entertainment pieces. I think the Golden Knights are probably one of the best of class teams that do that, where there's really no downtime. So if it's an intermission, if it's a penalty, if it's a scoring play, there's going to be equal, if not more, enthusiasm throughout the entire experience.
James Giglio is the CEO and founder of MVP Interactive and is literally on the fast track to the future. Thank you for joining us, James.
Well done. Thank you so much for having me.
The game day experience involves following everyone in sports. We all know this, whether it be via gambling or fantasy sports. And that's where IBM is trying to change the game. So gaming is changing at a rapid pace, whether it's what's become traditional, fantasy sports, or gambling, and everybody is modernizing. Noah Syken is the Vice President of Sports and Entertainment Partnerships at IBM, and Watson is being integrated at the worldwide leader these days in their fantasy games. Hi, Noah. How are you?
Good, Bram. Nice to be here with you.
Could you kind of give us some background on what you do?
Sure. So our team leads our sports technology integrations with great sporting events around the world, like Wimbledon, the U.S. Open, or in this case, fantasy football with ESPN.
So what is the partnership like? How does it work?
Yeah, so we have a very collaborative partnership, and we think about how can we apply new technologies in the world of sports every single day, and ESPN's a great partner. And so fantasy sports is a huge activity that millions of people are playing, every single week, 52 weeks a year. And so we thought about how we can enrich that experience for users, how we can give them more insight, better access to information, and really put better tools and capabilities in their hands to, as you just said, ensure that ESPN continues to be the worldwide leader in sports.
All right, so help us out here a little bit. I've been playing fantasy sports for a quarter century, whether it's a season-long league with my friends or daily fantasy now and all the different games and options that are out there. What does the modern fantasy user want?
Yeah, well, I think they want access to information. And so, every single day, Watson goes out and reads tons and tons of information about all the players, all the injuries, all the scouting reports from the camps every single week. More information than any person could reasonably consume every single night. And so that's the information that fantasy players want. They want to understand how that player is performing, in camp. Did they practice? Is Sam Darnold coming back from his, month-long layover? And so we really think about how we get all of that information, 3,000, 5,000, 10,000 sources of information every single day, into the hands of users of the ESPN Fantasy Football app. And we want to help them make a better decision about who they're going to sit, who they're going to start. And some of this was born out of, my own experiences as well. I've played this for 20 years as well. So I think everybody needs better insight and better information. That's what we focus on. Sam
Darnold really appreciates you classifying it as a layover. That is very, very happy that that's the word you're going to use for why he hasn't been available to fantasy players or the Jets, for that matter, over the last month. So are you guys trying to alter how the games are literally played, or are you more on the side of we're going to provide better information for the players?
Yeah, look, right now we are providing better information, but who knows where the capabilities will go. We're working on a couple of future-looking projects that may transform how transactions, are done in fantasy football. But for now, it's really about arming people with better information and helping them decide, look, I've had those experiences where I've had two running backs, right, and I have to decide who I'm going to start this week, and they're both projected to score 20 points. Right, but that one of them has a higher probability of scoring more than 20 points, and the other one has a higher probability of scoring less than 20 points. Until this capability came online for ESPN, players didn't really have that kind of capability. So we help them understand who might boom this week, who might bust this week, and what the probabilities are of each of those happening.
Can you be specific on that? Like, how do you come to a determination like that? Because, listen, I've run into that a million times. It happened a week ago where I had two or three guys had a choice to make, and I'm guessing at that. I'm guessing.
Yeah, well, so I certainly can't. I can't go into how the code was written. That's
right.
Not necessarily my expertise. But every single week, if you look at a player card in the ESPN Fantasy Football app, and you happen to look at that particular running back, you're going to see a probability curve. What's the probability they're going to score 2 points, they're going to score 20 points, and what's the sweet spot in that curve? But you're going to also understand they have a 25% chance of overachieving that sweet spot. Again, let's just use 20 points as an example. Now, let's say I'm playing a very competitive team in my particular league, and I know that they're going to put up a lot of points. I might want to put a little bit more risk, on the field this week, because I know that there's going to be a little bit more upside opportunity for that particular player. And so we put comparison tools right in the ESPN Fantasy Football app so that people can make those comparisons, compare 2, 3, or 4 players, and make the best choice based on who am I playing this week? Do I need to stretch a little bit? Do I need to take a little bit more risk? Or can I play a little bit more conservative because maybe I'm playing the last place player in my particular league?
I'll let you go with this. I think people see the games and it's put out there, and there's a lot of different offerings from a lot of different places, but we don't think a lot about this back-end part of it. Is this a really competitive space among companies to try to provide the best, most accurate data?
Well, I think it's, everybody's looking for the secret sauce. Everybody's looking for that special tool, that special piece of insights that's going to give them the competitive advantage. It's no different in sports than it is in everyday life, whether it's your kid's local, basketball, football game or, in business. So I think each platform is looking for what's going to differentiate it, what's going to actually cause people to pay for those insights. How are we going to monetize those insights? That's not so much IBM's business, but we hope that by providing these kinds of capabilities, it gives folks like ESPN, a competitive advantage in the marketplace.
Noah Syken is the Vice President of Sports and Entertainment Partnerships with IBM. Thank you, Noah.
Thanks, Brian. Appreciate it.
Up next, the costs of doing business on the secondary ticket market. That's the bullseye for a new player trying to help you get into an arena cheaper. This is the Future Sport Podcast. So let's take a minute here to thank our friends at 3Advance. These guys are ranked one of the nation's top app developers, but that's not all. They've helped grow a bunch of sports tech startups like Team Builder, T-Box Tour, and in-game fantasy, but they're also experts in user experience, cloud APIs, and artificial intelligence. So if you're looking for a dev partner to bring your future sport tech to life, look these guys up. Go to 3advance.com. They're the team to make it happen, and advance you will. That's the number 3advance.com, and tell them Future Sport sent you. Here is a sports admission that will age me. Many times I scalped tickets. So for those of you under 30, you might not even know what I'm talking about, as the secondary ticket marketplace eliminated that once, yes, illegal and uncomfortable negotiation to get into a game last minute. But now we're looking at the Ticket Marketplace 2.0. And Brett Goldberg is the CEO and co-founder of TickPick, which is a challenger to mainstays SeatGeek and StubHub, and is doing it without those pesky fees. Hey, Brett, how are you?
Doing great. Thanks for that incredible intro.
This is a really crowded space. How did you guys see yourselves differentiating yourselves?
I think from the outside it looks really crowded. You can go to Google Tickets and you'll see, Google will just fill up with results. When we looked into this and started in 2011, we'd already been talking about it for 4 years. The glaring issue was that the industry as a whole has a pretty negative sentiment. And one of the pieces that's probably hated the most is fees. And so we said we can come in and be the good guy and try to be transparent in what's not such a transparent industry and undercut the competition. So for us, it was pretty clear if we could sell tickets cheaper, there's all these other technology and features and things that we want to do. But at the end of the day, as long as we could sell tickets at cheaper prices by just running a more efficient business, that's a business model in itself.
Well, you're trying to make money, so how do you do it without taking fees from the customer?
So we're taking a 10 to 15% commission from the seller. So, from a consumer perspective, we advertise no hidden fees, and that's true. The price you see is the price you pay. And then part of that sale, there's a commission taken from the seller. Unlike all of our competitors who are doing both that commission side from the seller and then adding on somewhere between 10 and 20% in, I think what's fair to call it, hidden fees.
What is your relationship to the leagues themselves, who, if I'm correct, do take a cut of sales of some of those other major players?
It's a good question. Every league's different. StubHub and MLB have a public deal. I think that's what put StubHub on the map, give or take, around '08. And so there's a pretty deep integration there. They renewed that the last several years. The NFL, NBA, NHL has a deal with Ticketmaster, and so they power their ticket exchange. So there's typically, each league is only going to have kind of one exchange or marketplace that will be their official partner. And then things have been changing a bit more, and that things are becoming a bit more open. SeatGeek and their primary is trying to take their primary partners and then openly distribute that to all marketplaces. Ticketmaster's starting to try to do some of that as well with the NFL. So we don't have any direct relationships yet or official partnerships, but those conversations are being had.
Is that problematic? I guess my question is, and this just comes from a place of curiosity, do you need to have that relationship with them? Is there any way they can limit you reselling tickets to games if you don't have a specific relationship with them?
It's a really good question. There hasn't, from a legal perspective, there really hasn't anything that's gone to federal court where there's case law, case study on the ability to restrict ticket sales. And so that's been kind of one of the arguments over the last 15 years is the person, whoever buys a ticket, whether it's a fan or a ticket broker, is it their property now, and can they do whatever they want with that ticket, or is it a license to a seat for that short-term period for that game? And so there's no court ruling on that right now. So it's unclear if they can really, restrict that. There is the ability, and it's up to kind of it depends, state by state has different laws. The state of New York restricted is something that's called a transferable ticket or not. Most tickets are transferable. If I buy a PDF, I can then give it to you as a gift. Things have moved to mobile tickets. If I buy a mobile ticket, I still have the ability to transfer that to you. There are what's called non-transferable tickets, which is pretty uncommon, but that's then selling the ticket purchaser that only you're the ones allowed to redeem this. The way they've done that in the past is it gets tied to your credit card, and you have to show the credit card when you get to the venue. And so the state of New York actually restricted the ability to do only non-transferable tickets that was kind of thought of as not consumer friendly. And so you do have kind of this push and pull of you want what's best for the fan, but it's hard to know what's best for the fan sometimes because, it's not fair if I'm trying to buy tickets for my kids and then I really have no way of actually giving them those tickets. Or if you have a legitimate problem and you can't go and it's non-transferable and you can't sell that. This isn't a regulated industry like the airline industry. So the airlines, obviously, it's very clear you're buying a ticket to an airplane, which is a regulated industry, and you can't just go resell that seat if you want to.
I want to get to another side of this, which is we here have had a lot of discussion with all sorts of industry leaders in a variety of spaces that all say the same thing, which is everyone's trying to figure out how to get people to go to the games again with attendance dropping. And it is clearly your business model that people want tickets and want to go to games and want to purchase them. How does your business try to help make that attractive again?
For us, the key to that is making it easy to buy tickets. It's trying to create a cost-efficient model, so saving consumers, saving fans money when they go to events. In the scheme of things, if you're buying, family of four and you're going to a baseball game and maybe it's $20 each, you're looking at $80 purchase. On our competitors, that could be $100. So, that 25% in that case, that can be a pretty large sum. So it's price, one. It's user experience, making it really simple and easy. So whether you're using our app or using our web, you're going to be able to get to that checkout without having to do a sign-in, without having to go through this kind of user flow. That's a pretty painful user experience. And then it's also just kind of that ease of last minute being able to see what prices are, seeing what's available, getting the best delivery possible. So if in-app delivery is available, I've gone to Nets, Knicks, Mets games where I've been outside the stadium and I'm buying the tickets right there, and then I'm getting tickets instantaneously delivered to my phone. That's an incredible user experience. The more streamlined, more simplified that is for the fan, the easier it is to go. Some of the transfer, and I understand why venues want to do this and kind of control how that fan is getting into the stadium. The more hoops you put them through, the less likelihood the next time you go out, you go, you know what, instead of going to that game, I'd rather just go to a movie. Or I'm just going to stay home and watch Netflix. So it's making it easy for the fan and as affordable as possible. And then I think this isn't on TickPick specifically, but as a whole, I'm 34. I think one of the things that you've started to see in venues is creating more social spaces in the venues. And I absolutely love that. The last time I went to a Knicks game with a group of friends, I think we watched probably half the game. Now, granted, it's the Knicks and not that great. But, if there are areas, which they do have now in MSG, the renovation, where you can stand and you can watch and be social, you're starting to see a lot of that in venues now.
Yeah, I think we're seeing a lot of that, and which leads me to this. Do you see a future where fans could buy a game day experiential package from you that's offered on the secondary market?
Explain further.
So you're selling a seat to the game. Do you think teams are going to try to reach out to fans to make it more attractive by offering types of experiential packages by coming to the game, whether that be in the venue and outside of it, and whether that's a future for you all as well?
I absolutely love that. I mean, I'm a little biased being here in Manhattan right next to MSG. So I would happily go to a bar inside MSG to watch the game. So maybe I'm not actually sitting in a seat, but I'm at a bar and I could hear the energy and be part of that. That's a no-brainer to me. So I love the concept of that. So I do think that's going to be happening. You're starting to see some of that on the larger events that have tons of demand. You'll see for baseball playoffs, they start selling standing room only seats. I know the Yankees and Mets do this. I'm trying to think if the Dodgers have done it, but I know the Yankees and Mets have done that. You see that at some football games. The Cowboys have done standing room only seats. So there's also been a movement there. That's for really high demand events where it makes sense. Those pieces are always going to be easier than the majority of events, which are not the sellouts. Your standard average baseball games not selling out. How do you continue to fill those seats? That's the answer that I think everyone's trying to figure out. That's very difficult. Football, 8 games a year, it's significantly easier. Even for the majority of basketball teams, what is 41 home games? It's difficult to fill the stadium or venue every game.
I'm going to ask you this just because I think you probably know the answer to it because you're watching the marketplace. Are fans going to more games or less games than they used to?
And there's lots of news around MLB over the years. I think the way they've had to report on attendance has changed. And so I don't want to say it's being manipulated, but I think it could be misconstrued at times. And it's a bit, I don't focus my attention on that per se, but I know the way they've reported on ticket attendance has changed. And so that has had an impact on what they report on. But I do think it's fair to say that MLB attendance as a whole has decreased, and you're starting to see that spread to a few other categories. From a marketplace perspective, it's hard because I'm in this kind of startup growing bubble where we grow or have grown by 50, 60, 80% over the years. So our world continues to grow. Some of the leagues as a whole decline. Some of that is also concentrated in specific teams. So you have maybe 5 really bad performing teams, which drags down the whole MLB as a whole. So I think you just got to be careful in some of the headlines there.
Brett Goldberg is the CEO and co-founder of TickPick. Thank you, Brett.
Thanks for having me.
That will do it for us this week. Remember, the future is now. This is the Future Sport Podcast. I'm Bram Weinstein. The Future Sport Podcast is brought to you by 3Advance, developers of sports tech apps that are AI-powered and UX-focused. So if you're looking to create some apps for your startup or your sports biz calls for some artificial or business intelligence, you should check out 3Advance. They're incredible. Go to 3advance.com. That's the number 3advance.com.